Okay, let's unpack this one. For this deep dive, we're wrestling with a really fascinating collection.
Hmm.
It's described in the publisher notes as a bizarre and entertaining triptych.
Right.
The book's called Sometime Never, and it brings together three pretty wild tales. William Golding, John Wyndham, and Mervyn Peake.
Three heavy hitters, yeah.
Totally.
Yeah,
But what makes it stand out, according to the notes we're looking at, is that they call it the most frightening book in their series.
which is quite a claim.
It is. And why? Because supposedly these aren't just sci-fi stories. The authors are apparently creating three specific prophecies which show what is happening to our civilization today.
Wow. Prophecies, that's strong.
Yeah. So think of it as maybe a shortcut,
Mm.
understanding some really sharp critiques of our world,
Mm.
seeing through the past, the future, and a dream. Let's dive in.
Okay, and what really jumps out right away is how the notes frame these stories. They argue this book is actually more unsettling, more frightening and powerful than collections of murder, war, and horror stories.
More frightening than horror. Seriously. How do they figure that?
Well, the core idea seems to be that these authors aren't just dreaming up monsters or big space battles. The source material says they show us in dramatic action stories what we are doing to ourselves.
Oh, okay.
It puts Sometime Never up against classics like Brave New World, 1984, Fahrenheit 451.
Right, the big dystopias.
Exactly. But it says these stories are more subtly frightening and intellectually stimulating.
Subtly.
Mm.
Okay, so the point isn't just escapism. It's using these imaginative settings, future, past, weird dream, as a kind of mirror.
Precisely. That's the argument,
Mm.
that these kinds of stories are really ways of talking about the present.
Mm.
They become powerful criticisms of what we assume is a normal way of life.
And they seem to use a specific technique for this, that reductio ad absurdum thing.
Yeah, that's highlighted as a key device. It's about taking some trait or trend that exists now. Could be something good, could be bad.
Right. And just stretching it out, extrapolating it way into the future, or distorting it to show how absurd or, bad it could become. Like a natural cause and effect taken to the extreme.
Which, the source claims, is how you end up with some of the sharpest sexual, social, and political criticism that is being aimed at our way of life today. Pushing things to the edge to show us where we might be heading.
Exactly that. Imagination not as escape, but as a really sharp tool for analysis.
Okay. Let's maybe start with the first story then. John Wyndham's Consider Her Ways. That's the future one, right?
Yep.
And the notes specifically mention this one as a great example of that reductio ad absurdum thing.
Yes. It apparently takes stuff that was popular back then, like women's magazines, the whole perfect mother image, advertising, TV, and just blows it up, projects it forward into something almost, grotesque.
And this future. It sounds pretty wild. A world where men have basically ceased to have any functional necessity except to create wars and dominate. Right. And because of that, the women have essentially dispensed with them.
Dispense with them, okay.
Which leads to what the notes describe as the model for the full life in this future. It's this image of a fat, pink, illiterate woman who spends her life on a couch eating and every so often delivering 4 perfect babies.
Oh my goodness.
Who are, of course, raised by women to be mothers also. It's a very pointed image.
It really is. And the story throws us in through the eyes of this character, Mother Orcus. We find out later her name was Jane Waterley. She wakes up after taking some drug.
Juatin, yeah. Sounds potent.
Right. And she's totally lost. I think she's hallucinating.
And her first impression, that's how we see this bizarre reality. She notices she's huge, physically massive. There are other enormous young women around.
But then the others are smaller.
Yeah, others she thinks are normal size are called servitors, and they seem much smaller. The buildings are scaled weirdly, and everything's just pink. So much pink.
Pink. Okay. Then she has this really important conversation with an old woman, Laura.
Right, Laura. And she's the one who gives the backstory, explains how this world came about, apparently a virus.
The classic sci-fi virus trope.
Kind of. But this one was made by a Dr. Peregrine initially to kill brown rats, like myxomatosis, but it mutated into something called mucosa morbus.
Okay.
And then, oops, it mutated again, accidentally. And this time it attacked human males, almost wiped them out.
Wow. So, an accidental apocalypse that just cleared the deck for a totally female society.
That's the story. Laura talks about the collapse and then women, especially doctors and nurses, rebuilding everything. And they set up this really rigid social structure.
Like the mothers, the servitors.
Exactly. Mothers like Jane, just for making babies. Servitors, the smaller ones, doing domestic stuff. And then workers, bigger, sort of Amazon types, doing the heavy lifting.
And Laura doesn't hold back on criticizing Jane's time, the 20th century.
No, she really lays into it, calls it dominated by a romantic conception, all commercially exploited, made women consumers, dependent, less creative. She calls it a cruel, tantalizing sham.
Ouch. Contrasting that with her society, which she sees as purely about survival,
Yeah.
focused on the organic, the sentient.
And absolutely no need for men, calls them a useless and dangerous encumbrance.
Dangerous encumbrance.
Yeah. She argues women are finally free from, fighting over men's attention.
The notes also mention these reactionists, right? Women who wanted men back.
Yeah, they wanted to restore the balance, but they're outlawed, called a subversive criminal organization. It paints a picture of a very controlled society, very uniform.
And Jane's experience gets even weirder because she starts thinking, maybe this isn't just the drug. It feels too real.
Too consistent.
And the thing that clicks is when she learns, in this future vision, about Dr. Peregrine's real work with rat viruses back in her own time. Information she couldn't have known.
And that's the trigger. She realizes, oh God, this could actually happen. So she decides she has to stop it, prevent this future.
By going back and stopping Peregrine in her own time, which she tries to do.
Leading to his death, and his lab getting destroyed.
Which then leads us to the aftermath. Back in Jane's original time, her doctor, Dr. Hellier, is talking to a solicitor.
Yeah, and Hellier feels awful, right? He gave her the drug. He's suggesting, temporary insanity because of the Troy-Nuwatan as a defense.
And the solicitor reads Jane's whole story.
Finds it totally unreasonable on the face of it, and this is the creepy part, he notes it's pervaded throughout with such an air of reasonableness.
That line gives me chills, like the crazy future she described. It sounds believable in its own twisted way.
And it gets worse, because they actually talk about the biology of it. Is male extendability even possible?
Oh, really?
Yeah. Hellier admits, well, theoretically, maybe, with a massive research effort, he compares it to the atom bomb project. It's not impossible. And the solicitor finds that potential nearness, as he calls it, enough to make me a trifle uneasy.
I'll bet. And the final twist, according to the source material, the future. It's not totally off the table.
Nope. The solicitor finds out Dr. Peregrine had a son, also Dr. Peregrine, a DSC biochemist.
Oh, no.
And he survived, salvaged some specimens, and is determined to carry on his father's work. So that possibility is still lurking.
Wow. Okay. That is unsettling. Let's shift gears completely. From that bizarre future back to the past, William Golding's story. Envoy extraordinary.
Right. And this one uses history differently. Not predicting, but asking a really pointed question about now.
Which is?
Basically, what would you do, knowing everything good and bad that human invention has led to, if you were back in the Garden of Eden? Like a reset button. Would you press it?
Oh, innocence versus knowledge, but for society.
Oh, okay.
And the characters.
You've got Mamilius, the emperor's grandson, young, a bit angsty, bored with the usual pleasures, kind of feeling this existential dread.
Relatable.
Then the emperor herself. He's old, restless, always wants something new, and he's especially keen on the inventions brought by Phanicles.
Phanicles the inventor. Right.
And Phanicles shows up with some game changers, a steam engine. He's put it in a ship called Amphitrite.
A steamship in ancient Rome,
Okay,
right?
explosives, too. And a printing press, stuff that would completely mess with the status quo.
Definitely.
But, kind of funny, the thing the notes highlight is the emperor's excitement over the pressure cooker.
The pressure cooker, not the steam engine.
Yeah.
Huh?
He sees it as a way to taste meat in its exquisite simplicity, like getting back to basics, to his youth. It contrasts with Mamilius, who's more into the complex variables of, fancy cooking.
Interesting contrast. Basic needs versus intellectual complexity.
Exactly. And when the emperor goes down to the port to see this steamship, Amphitrite, it just causes instant chaos.
I can imagine.
Yeah, the notes describe immediate unrest. The slaves who row the galleys, they see this thing and think, uh-oh, we're out of a job.
Right. Automation anxiety, ancient Rome style.
Pretty much. So there's chaos, ships crashing, fires breaking out. The invention immediately causes disruption.
And this leads to a confrontation, right, with Posthumus.
Yeah, Posthumus comes storming in, demands the emperor set up a regency, basically saying, look, it's these inventions. Phanocles is causing all this trouble.
But the emperor stays cool.
Remarkably calm, apparently. He starts getting philosophical about life, time, knowledge. He knows how Phanocles is all action, no introversion, no selfishness, just pure invention. He even makes a comment about Latin being ill-adapted to philosophy. Bit of a meta joke there from Golding, maybe.
Maybe. And there's that weird bit where Phanocles just doesn't get hurt.
Yeah, despite being in the middle of chaos, a slave apparently says it's because he has a demon protecting him. Adds this slightly uncanny edge.
And then Posthumus dies.
Yeah.
Kind of mysteriously.
It's described as confusing. He dies near one of Phanocles' weapons, probably the Tormentum-like, a big catapult or ballista. There's a flash, a thunderclap. It's vague. Suggests the unpredictable danger of these new powers.
So the story uses this historical setting, ancient Rome, but with these anachronistic inventions to really explore that initial question.
Exactly. The double-edged sword of progress. Invention brings amazing things, but also chaos, destruction, unpredictable consequences.
And the dilemma is, knowing all that, would you still embrace it? Would you take that bite of the apple? It's that fundamental choice about knowledge and its price.
Precisely. The temptation of the new, the powerful, the efficient. But it always comes with a cost. Disruption, maybe even destruction.
Okay, deep stuff. Now for the third one, Mervyn Peake's Boy in Darkness. This sounds like the strangest of the three.
Oh, definitely. The source material calls it the most hauntingly nightmarish, disturbing, and original.
High praise and kind of scary praise.
It is, and it's very allegorical, very open to interpretation. The notes toss out a few ideas, like, is it a scathing satire on Christianity, or maybe a post-nuclear war world, or just a descent into the blackness of man's soul?
So deliberately ambiguous.
Seems so. The power is in that unsettling feeling, you know? It follows this boy. He's just turning 14. And he feels trapped in his home, this castle.
Trapped how?
By these oppressive rituals, deadly symbolism, things that feel totally meaningless to him.
Adolescent rebellion turned up to 11.
You could say that. He feels this savage resentment, this imperative rebellion. He wants insurrection, needs to escape the jails of precedent. Strong words.
Yeah, so he does escape.
Yep, uses secret passages, a rope, gets out of the castle.
In the world outside.
It starts kind of familiar, peculiarities he recognizes, but then it just gets weirder and weirder, unfamiliar, which is scary, but also he feels this pull, a longing for exploration, even for danger.
And then the dogs.
Oh, yeah, the dogs, described so creepily, hounds out of somewhere else.
Got us somewhere else.
Yeah, and they're cowardly and bullying with these bright and acid yellow eyes. They don't actually attack him, but they sort of herd him, drive him towards a river.
Okay, that's unnerving.
Then he has to cross the river in a little boat, a skiff, and the image the notes give is just these dogs' heads bobbing in the water all around him, still watching him.
Super creepy. What happens when he gets across?
He wakes up, basically, in this totally alien place. There's this feeling that some new quality hovered between him and the sun, and he just knows instinctively there's something up ahead he does not want to meet.
But he probably meets it anyway.
Oh, yeah. He runs into the goat and the hyena.
Goat and hyena, okay. Not exactly friendly woodland creatures, I'm guessing?
Not at all. They're described as deeply disturbing. The goat has a long face, wears a ridiculous suit, walks with a weird sideways trot, scratches in the dust.
Bizarre.
The hyena just cracks bones and shouts. The notes call them near idiots.
What? Take him somewhere.
They basically force him along on this journey through a desolate landscape, up some terraces, and eventually down into an underground vault.
Underground vault. Getting darker.
Yeah. And the vault itself is a weird mix. Industrial, like metal girders, chains, but also silent, flickering flames. And then, boom, a luxurious room inside it. Red carpet, library.
What? Okay. And who's in there?
That's where he meets the lamb.
The lamb. Not a cute, fluffy one, I presume.
Definitely not. This lamb is the Lord of the Mines, sits in a high chair. He's blind, but somehow watchful.
Blind but watchful.
And the source material describes him as having this angry, acrid fire burning inside, a deep loathing of all humans.
Whoa, hates humans.
Yeah. Apparently he used to transform other creatures, spiremen, gazellemen, whatever, but they all died out. Only the near idiots, goat and hyena, are left as his servants.
So what happens with the boy?
There's this ritual. Goat and hyena present the boy to the lamb. The lamb, being blind, touches the boy's face, his temple, traces his profile.
To see him.
Seems like it, to learn his quality, and the lamb identifies him as a thing of youth and style, something of pride, of immortal, unbeasted, still human.
And the lamb's reaction to that.
It's described with this really striking image. A covetous and fiery rash spread out beneath the wool.
Ooh, that sounds awful. Covetous.
Yeah, like a twisted desire or maybe anger, very visceral.
And how does that part of the story end?
It ends with the hyena and goat sort of anticipating what the white lamb is going to do to the boy, what he'll make of him. And then the lamb lets out this long bleat, which the notes say signals the pain that always followed for goat and hyena. So it leaves the boy's fate totally up in the air, but feeling very, very ominous.
Yikes. Okay. That is definitely nightmarish.
And again, the point isn't necessarily one single meaning. It's using this dream logic, this allegory, to poke at unsettling questions about the modern mind, our personalities, and modern ideas of worship. It's symbolic, not straightforward narrative.
Right. So pulling all three back together, Wyndham's future, Golding's past, Peake's dream. The notes are saying that despite being so different, they're all doing a similar job.
That seems to be the main thrust, yeah. Each uses its own imaginative world, future projection, historical what-if, symbolic nightmare, to function as this powerful critique of the time they were written in, the mid-20th century.
Using that reductio ad absurdum, or like allegorical distortion.
Exactly. To hold up this kind of warped mirror to contemporary life, show us ourselves, but magnified or twisted.
And the common thread, the thing linking them in this collection, according to the source material, is showing what we are doing to ourselves.
Offering these sharp criticism of the values, the trends, the anxieties of that period.
It's this argument that by imagining the extremes, the possible endpoints, the distortions, we actually get a clearer, maybe more uncomfortable understanding of where we are right now.
Yeah, that seems to be the core idea.
So whether it's, that terrifying future where men are just gone, or a past where inventions spark instant chaos, or this really disturbing dream journey ruled by a blind, angry lamb, sometime never uses imagination to reflect its own time.
And maybe ours too.
Maybe ours too, yeah. A lot of these themes, they still feel pretty relevant, don't they? These stories suggest that our values, our choices, our tech, even our, inner lives, if you push them to the limit or look at them sideways, you might see some pretty uncomfortable truths about being human.
So what stands out to you hearing about these? Do they just feel like, interesting old stories? Or do they actually tap into anxieties or things we see playing out now?
That's a great question, and maybe here's where it gets really interesting. What if the most powerful warnings about what's coming aren't in, straightforward predictions? What if they're actually hidden in these imaginative deep dives into our biggest fears and the absolute extremes of where our current trends could take us?